Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Richard Geary. He's an executive vice president of drug development, and he's here to discuss why communication is just as important as technical skill for leaders. We'll break down the biggest mistakes technical professionals make when talking to non-technical audiences, and we'll share actionable strategies for making complex work clear and compelling. Plus, we'll also cover tips on managing nerves, improving presentations, and the first changes anyone can make to communicate with impact. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Richard.
Thank you, Neil.
So, first question, Richard, when did you realize that communication was not just a soft skill, but a core part of your job?
Probably very shortly after I joined a publicly traded scientific company, and we needed to communicate with the public, and especially the public that was investing in our science. So that became, job number one.
Indeed. Okay, so then early on in your career, how did you approach explaining technical work, and what did you realize was not working well?
Yeah, I was going to say pretty quickly found out that it wasn't working very well. I had a really important mentor early in my career, and one of the things that he taught me was to get out of the jargon um, basement, if you will. And he would ask me a question and say, just write an answer. And then he would just scratch out all the jargon, which was, 50% of what I said, scratch out all the jargon and say, fill in with words that everybody understands.
Yeah, that was
It's
very
pretty good.
helpful. That was quite helpful, that person that told you that, because I think that's necessary too, especially when you're talking to non-technical people. And I think a lot of times also technical people forget that they didn't always know what all that jargon meant too. And so what kind of presentation could you have understood back then?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, yeah. I think so many of us we forgive. Like you weren't born knowing what all those words meant. You went to school, you likely took on these types of roles, these technical roles, and then now you have all this knowledge and you just assume everyone else has it, but you didn't always have it. So
Didn't always have it. That's right.
absolutely. Okay. So then what are the most common ways that technical professionals lose a non-technical audience?
Well, I think a lot of it is not bringing the audience up to where they are. Whatever the topic might be, they start in the middle of the story. I do that all the time. You get a question and you start where you think it should start, but it's really a whole lot of background that brought you to that point. So that's one aspect. Um, a lot of people don't have the biological or chemistry kind of background, and so you almost have to have word pictures for things. I think one of the things that really helped me was I have a non-technical, non-scientific wife. And she used to ask me, I still don't understand what you do. Tell me what you do. So eventually, I started off the story with, see this napkin? I would crumple up the napkin and I say, this is a protein. Let's talk about what proteins do in your body. So it started like that, and she laughs about it today. But she still tells me she doesn't quite understand what I do. So I'm not quite there. I may not be there yet.
Guess you gotta crumple up some more napkins.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that's great. How does misalignment between technical explanations and executive understanding show up in drug development decisions?
Well, a lot of times we're dealing with a board of directors or we're dealing with an executive committee that's made up of folks from different backgrounds, legal, um, financial, all different backgrounds, not necessarily scientific. Um, I'm kind of lucky because I'm uh, part of an R&D company, and so research and development is part of the company ethos. But then you get into communicating with a board of directors who come from many different backgrounds, but definitely not exactly what you're doing. Yeah. And so I remember when I joined Ionis, which is the company I'm with today, I sat in a data club and listened to a presentation about the science. And the guy who was sitting next to me, uh, he said every few sentences, he leaned over to me and said, "That's like this." What he's talking about is something that I understood, but the company was already speaking a different language because they were in a different scientific area than I had grown up in or even been, uh, trained in. So I think it's a big problem. When you get into R&D, then you have to make decisions about priorities, where you're going to spend your money. What are the probabilities of success of this or that? And to really understand that, you have to understand assumptions and what really goes into baking the cake, if you will, and what ingredients in the baking of the cake are likely to be problematic. And so that's kind of how it has to be um, drilled down to and explained as you go into a situation where you want a certain outcome, but to get to that outcome, you've got to be able to bring everybody on board.
Yeah. What do you think typically happens? What do you think typically happens when a board, as you mentioned, that have these differing expertise, is listening to a technical person speak, and the board has to make these business decisions, but they can't understand what this technical person is saying. So, what do you typically see as the outcome of that?
Well, it's not usually good. Um, the first thing, they all come in with their own background and their own experiences. And so if they think this person is trying to snow them with jargon and trying to be the smartest guy in the room, it immediately puts them on the defensive and negative. So it's not a good outcome.
Yeah, I certainly can see that happening. And if they're on the defensive, the likelihood of you getting a yes for whatever you're advocating for is pretty low, right?
Pretty low. Exactly.
Yeah. What trade-offs do you technical professionals need to make when deciding what level of detail to include for a senior audience?
Hmm. That's a really good question, Neil. And I'm not sure it probably differs depending on the audience and what you're trying to communicate. But I think starting as high level as possible, depending on who you're talking to, um, using word pictures, analogies, thinking about what you're going to say before you say it, not trying to do it off the cuff like we do so often. So hopefully you've had time to think about what you're going to talk about and then bringing it to that kind of a level. For me, that's how I think about it. What's the decision they have to make? And then if that decision requires this information, then you start at that level.
I agree with you, and I also agree with what you said about word pictures and analogies. You earlier said using more words that more people would know as opposed to the jargon. I think all of that goes
Yeah.
a long way into helping, non-technical people understand what technical people are talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what can organizations do to help their technical professionals improve their communication skills?
Oh, 100%. So there are probably communication classes that people can take. Um, so communication and then practice. So before you have to get in front of a board, actually having opportunity to interact and have experience with your teams and with the internal um, folks who know you and maybe like you, hopefully, and you can make mistakes and they can understand that you're trying before you get into that situation where you have to really perform. Another way of doing this is to identify mentors who are really good at communication. I was very fortunate, as I said earlier, to have a boss who was a mentor who really drove home this point of communication. But not everybody has that, and sometimes you either have to, on your own, seek that kind of mentor or someone who has experience and you know they do well. In the science field, we all go to conferences and we see people speak, and some people are great and some people are not so great. And so maybe gravitating to and attempting to get a relationship with someone who you see does a great job communicating and learning from them. So there's a number of ways, some that you can drive, some that get driven by management, and hopefully you've got a manager who will look out for you and help you. Maybe it's getting in touch with an organization such as yours, where that kind of experience comes and training can come through understanding what other people are dealing with.
Indeed. You mentioned that at conferences, the scientific conferences, you've noticed speakers that are good and some that aren't as good. I'm curious, what separates those types of speakers?
Well, it's all about language. So, and it is all about avoiding the jargon. A lot of the conferences that I go to, I'll go into um, sessions where they're talking about a new area, like a completely new technology. And I want to learn about the technology, right? So I'm hoping they're communicating at a level that, though I'm trained in the science, I'm not trained in that specific science, that they speak in a way that is understandable. So it's all about being related, relatable. I think that's the right word I'm trying to think of to the audience and understanding that the audience isn't all at the same level they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that definitely is something that I've noticed at conferences too. And but something I've also, well, something I suspect, I don't know if this is true or not, but the people who are presenting at these conferences, these scientific conferences, typically they are professors or maybe they're postdocs or grad students. And
Mhm.
the fact that they're presenting at the conference is the goal. It's not to be an effective speaker necessarily. It's only the ones that really understand the benefit of speaking in a way that others can understand and will think about how can I put this presentation in a way that most of the people or as many people as possible can understand. But if your
Mm.
goal is to be able to put this on a CV, I presented at this conference, well, mission accomplished. You got up there, you read your slides, and you got out of there as quickly as possible. But if you were to ask anybody, what did you take away from the what did you take away from that presentation? You might get crickets.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. All right. Is speaking something you've always been good at? And if not, what did you do to get better at it?
Oh, I was terrible. In fact, the fear of speaking was probably the first thing I had to overcome. So speaking in front of a group or in front of an audience was terrifying. And so just getting over that piece, then the next level was actually communicating, and communicating in a way that more people understood than didn't. So I was not good at all. In grad school, I can remember presenting at a medical conference, and I'm fairly certain very few people took home much from what I had to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
as I said, I've gone to a number of these types of conferences too, and you certainly can tell the people who are a bit nervous. The sweat kind of gives it away, and then a lot, and the shaking. Can't forget the shaking.
Yes, right. And the
But
shaky voice
yeah, the shaky voice, and they're using their laser pointer,
goes
and
with
the
it.
and the hand is shaking, so the laser pointer is shaking all over the place. But yeah, you certainly can get better at it over time if you think about what can I do to improve, and you don't shy away from giving the presentations. You don't get better at it by thinking that you can get better at it. You get better at it by actually doing it. And
Doing it.
yeah, I really like your point
Yeah.
also, Richard, about practice. I have a friend who used to give me a hard time about practicing my presentations. A lot of times he would just get up there and talk, but you can definitely tell the difference because when you
Mm,
practice, you can figure out what's the best way to put this information together so that the majority of people can understand. But if you don't practice and it just comes out as it comes out, and then you are using the jargon, you kind of going all over the place. It's difficult to follow what you're saying if it's just coming out as it
that's
comes
right.
out. And then yeah, you certainly can get those instances where the board's getting defensive because you're trying to hit them with a whole bunch of words they may not understand, and now they're thinking I wasted my time in this meeting, and why do we hire this person? And a whole bunch of problems.
And that's not good for anybody.
No, no, not at all. I mentioned the,
Right.
the the nerves, and you said that that was an issue you had to get over. What do you do to manage your nerves?
Well, early on, it was kind of not looking at the audience, not actually mm, taking in that all these people are looking at me. So I would look over their heads and distract myself by looking at something that was just probably just above their head on the back wall, you know. That helped, but it what I wanted to be able to do at some point was actually engage. And some of the speakers that are particularly engaging are ones that are actually looking at the audience, and they're not just at one point looking at one section. So it's just a matter of practice and doing it over and over. And sometimes it's practicing. One of the hardest things for me was doing these practice runs with your group. They know you, you know them. Why was it hard? It was just hard to get into the moment that it wasn't real. It was mock. But you could do these mocks and at least get used to moving around and looking and making sure you're engaging the audience.
I was once told that when you're giving a presentation, you should look at someone in the eyes for 3 seconds before moving on to the next person. You have no idea how long 3 seconds is until you stare someone in the eyes for 3 seconds. It feels like an
Seems like a
eternity.
long time.
It feels like an eternity, Richard. I'm telling you. What would end up happening is I'd forget what I was going to say next, and so now I'm looking at the next person, and I completely blanked on what I'm going to say next. So if I was sweating profusely before, now it's coming down like rain. So I had to figure out a different way. So what I do now is I don't look at people's eyes. I look at their foreheads, or I might look at their eyebrows. I don't find it as distracting as looking directly into their eyes. So
Yes.
take that with a maybe try that
Oh,
out.
that's interesting. I've
And
never heard that, but that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, yeah, especially if you're on a stage and you're elevated, people can't tell the difference
Mhm.
anyway. If you're looking at
Mhm.
their eyebrows.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
Try it out. See how it works out for you. Okay. So if a technical professional wanted to improve their communication skills, what is the first behavior you have them change?
Hmm. Well, I think we all have kind of ticks or things that we don't realize we do. We get very nervous about what's happening with our hands. So for me, in the early days, the easiest thing was to have a podium that I could stand behind, and I would hold the podium. That would keep my shaking down. But sometimes you have to have a clicker and a pointer, and so you start to get used to these things, but it takes time. Get control of your hands. Maybe that's the first thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely can see that being an issue. And I really do like those podiums too, because I like to grip them myself. In fact, when I had a former guest and he said that when he does virtual presentations, he grips the sides of his chair, but I don't have any sides to my chair, so I grip stress balls.
Oh, there you go.
It works like a charm. I got a bunch of them. One of the reasons I even like going to conferences is so that I could go to the exhibit tables and get people's stress balls if they have any. Oh, you got something to grip too. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
I got another one here. Got a bunch of them. But at least that works for virtual. I'm not sure if you can do that for an in-person one. Although another guest had said that what she does is to manage her nerves is she wiggles her toes. I mean, I wouldn't suggest doing that if you
Hmm.
have open-toed shoes, but certainly if you got closed-toed, you can wiggle your toes. And she swears by it. She says that you're focusing more on the fact that you're wiggling your toes than on the fact that you're nervous. And I've done it a few times, and it works pretty well too.
Wow, I haven't heard of that. I may have to try it.
Yeah, yeah, see how it works out. This has been a great conversation, Richard. Thank you so much for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, they can, of course, email me at rgeary@ionis.com. IONIS. I think you have my email. Um, and probably the other way is to call me, but I hardly ever answer my phone, so that's probably not the best.
All right, email certainly works. Well, everyone,
Yeah.
that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Neil.